and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. As the world marks International Migrants Day on December 18th, today on the episode we'll take a look at how global shifts in mobility are shaping Malaysia's economy, labour market and social fabric. So what are the key migration trends, challenges and opportunities that the country is facing today? We will delve deeper into all of this with the good folks from the International Organization for Migration, Heba Abdellatif, who is the Chief of Mission to Malaysia, and Amanda Ng, who is the National Program Officer for Malaysia. Welcome to the show, both of you. Thank you so much for being here with me. If I may begin with you, Heba. Maybe what we can do to set the conversation, set the scene for the conversation is maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the organization IOM. Also, it's known as the UN Migration Agency. Talk to us a little bit about what it does, what its mission is, and who it aims to support.
So thank you so much, first of all, Melissa, for inviting us and for celebrating with us Migrants Day on the 18th of December. IOM is a UN agency since 2016, but it was established actually in 1951. We work on a diverse profile of migration based on government policies and priorities. We work under the framework of the Global Compact on Migration, which is a non-binding government-led framework that allows governments to tailor their migration policies based on their priorities and their needs. Within that context, of course, we work on saving lives, we work on finding solutions for internally displaced, and our third most important strategic point is regular pathways. How can we enhance and extend regular pathways to migrants? Let me give you some facts maybe to start with. Yes. We have 281 million international migrants worldwide. People moving, people who are going on a journey every day, whether it's for education, for work, for family reunification, for resettlement. So many different versions of migrants that need support to make their journey as positive as possible. We have 117.3 million people forcibly displaced as of June 2025. They could be displaced due to conflict, due to climate change, different reasons behind that, but these are people that need support, sometimes temporarily and sometimes even for longer term. And then finally, there's over 202,000 detected victims of trafficking reported by states in 2023. Victims of trafficking, of course, again, mainly women and children are the most vulnerable to this crime. And trying to find them the right support, whether from the minute we are able to identify them, provide them with immediate support, and then see what solutions they have. There's the legal system, of course, in every country, but there's also basic needs, getting them prepared sometimes even to go back and reintegrate into their society. As I mentioned, we've been here in Malaysia since 2005. Our programs have focused mainly on refugee resettlement. We do labor mobility, labor migration. We do integrated border governance, which includes counter-trafficking and counter-smuggling, and of course trying to find the best way for the protection of migrants and providing them with as much assistance as possible within the frameworks allowed for in Malaysia.
Heba, thank you so much for making that distinction. I think sometimes when we talk about migration, we lump it all under one big, broad category, but you've made the distinction that there are different categories: labor migrants, there are those who are displaced, there are refugees, the trafficking victims and survivors. So I think that's a really important distinction for us to make and have that lens, I think, going forward, particularly in this conversation. Amanda, talk to me a little bit about IOM's work in Malaysia specifically with the lens of the categories that Heba mentioned.
Oh, I think the work actually have to Heba to mention it.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
No, I think the work we do is mainly focused on capacity building here. We do a lot of work with government entities, supporting their needs and their gaps, and trying to build models that can be institutionalized. We're not creating separate parallel models, but basically working with the systems to see how, as a technical expertise on migration from different parts of the world, how can we support and enhance existing systems or even creating new systems. For example, again, as mentioned, we were talking about victims of trafficking, which is my favorite, closest to my heart topic, because that's where I started working 15 years ago. What happens when you identify a victim of trafficking? How are they supported beyond the legal system again? Where do they go? Who do they call to? What kind of referral system exists? And this, in some countries, has been more successful than others. I've seen it in some countries where you can literally pick up the phone and somebody will answer you on the other side. You say, I've seen a child who I think is trafficked. Can you help? And they will take it from that moment and they will be able to provide the right assistance until they find a solution to that case. And I think for me, that is something I'm trying to work on. There is quite an elaborate system here. We work with MAPO. There are shelters for victims of trafficking. There's a very strong legal framework. And we are working with them to even make it, to enhance it more.
Amanda, what is your view of the work that's being done in Malaysia, particularly given the narrative and the context of migrants here? We often hear this, I guess, misconception that, you know, migrants take jobs, that migrants increase crime, that there is a strain on public services because of them. And I think that it's important that we address some of these misconceptions. Talk to me a little bit about what you've noticed in your work here.
For sure, I think misconceptions do exist everywhere. But if we really look at the fact, it paints a very different picture. Like what Heba has mentioned just now is that migrants community is not a homogeneous group. I think that is a fact, right? But also if you look at the situation in Malaysia here right now, we also have different group of all these migrant workers, and they have different needs and different contribution that makes the Malaysia reality as of today as well. And Malaysia hosts around 2.1 millions of migrant workers who actually fill up the labor shortages in key industry like the constructions, manufacturing, services, plantation. And by filling up all these gaps in the job market, they actually promote business growth. And this business growth actually bring benefits such as creating more jobs for Malaysians and increase a higher national income for us.
Yeah, we don't really often think or give the credit where it's due of how much migrant workers are part of our development, help our economic progress, our economic growth. When you work with the private sector, when you work with stakeholders in Malaysia, how do you convey the importance of recognizing that contribution?
I think with our work with the private sector, what we have seen right now is that actually even the Malaysian company itself, they recognize the importance of all these labor migrants. They even stepping up, wanted to strengthen their labor system in order to protect all these migrant workers throughout the labor migration journey. And this is why they also approach with IOM to seek for guidance. But it's not just because it's the right thing to do, but it also make a good business sense. Because if you look at globally right now, we have such an increasing trade and due diligence legislation upcoming that aim at preventing services or even product that preventing forced labor practices. So if a Malaysian company strengthening their practices, it also strengthening their competitiveness, and that actually opened up door for them to international market, actually helps to build Malaysia's reputation as a responsible trading partners, and of course ultimately is to promote a safe and orderly migration for all and benefits the society, the economies as well.
Yeah, we've seen how allegations of forced labor practices has really hurt companies, their brand, their reputation, and also access to markets, as you mentioned. Looking at Malaysia's context, or Malaysia's practices towards migrants, and you know, let's make a distinction. Let's talk about the labor migrants first. Maybe you can help me think through some of the, I guess, pain points or the gaps in Malaysia's current labor migration system. When we think about the entire system, as you mentioned, Heba, where are the gaps? Where are the inefficiencies that can be improved? Do you want to take that, Amanda or Heba?
I think when it comes to a labor migrations systems in Malaysia here, we do have quite a comprehensive laws and regulation when it comes to managing the migrant workers itself in the countries. What I see from most of the time is that when it comes to the enforcement, right? Enforcement on labor inspectorate, probably that is a challenge that we heard from the government. I think it was also reported on the report as well. But we also heard from a lot of employers is that what are some of the incentives for them to do better? Okay. So for a lot of employees is that sometimes they feel like they only will adhere to the minimal standard, what our Malaysia law have stated, what they needed to do. But a lot of the time we also see increasingly the companies, because of all the environmental, social and governance standard, they want to do better. They want to report that they actually adhere to a better standard. Then it opens up door for them on businesses and profit. That is also another side that we are seeing as well. So on the other side, we also heard that migrant workers do not have enough information. So we have pre-departure orientation in the country of origin, but how about a post-arrival orientation in our country? So once they arrive in Malaysia, this is also, they also have the information, what are the do's and don'ts and expectation to live in Malaysia and their working situation as well. So this is also an area of work that Malaysia perhaps can look into it. But of course, we are doing that in partnership with the government to look into this, fulfilling the gap on the post-arrival orientation.
Is that common practice in other countries for migrants, for the labour market? When you have migrants come in, you have a post-arrival kind of briefing or introduction, is it?
Yes, for a comprehensive information system, good practices is that you have actually 4 rounds of orientation. It's a lot. You have to start with the pre-employment orientation. So by the time they are selected by the job or even wanted to interview for a job, what is the expectation? You start with that. And then once they're selected, you go into a pre-departure orientation where before they depart, there is this information session for them. Once they arrive here, there is a post-arrival session for them. And then before they return back to their country upon their finishing the contract, then there is this pre-return orientation for them as well.
Wow, okay, so that's actually really comprehensive. So that would be the kind of best practices that we would aim for. What are the gaps or protection risks do you see for migrant workers in Malaysia? Are there areas where some of these risks can be mitigated?
I think in the case of labour migrants, I would say when we look at the risk, we also look at stages. For migration stage, we look at recruitment, employment and return stage. On the recruitment stage, based on our research, we always found that there is this high recruitment fees and costs faced by or even charged on the migrant workers themselves. They do not aware of the contract that they are signing.
Is that still happening, to have a recruitment fee borne by the migrant worker themselves?
So from our research, we still found yes.
But that's not the way it's meant to be, right? Okay.
Yes.
Right. Well, please continue.
Yes, but it does continue that. So basically high recruitment fees and costs, and after that is not understanding the contract situations, or even there is what we call a contract substitution, what they were being briefed on the terms and conditions of their work, actually different from the contract that they signed. So this is also a very common issue that we have found as well. And while in the employment stage, it's very common that their living conditions is probably not on par. But Malaysia do have very good law in housings, which is just the challenges right now is on the enforcement on checking the housing situation that lived by the migrant workers. Another thing is more of a lot of cases that we heard lately is also about the salary withholding. So there are still cases, but so this is also a very common issues that we have faced as well, that we heard from the communities themselves.
What happens, so Heba, you mentioned something quite wonderful about having, say, a hotline for, suspected trafficking victims. What avenues or recourses for justice do migrant workers, do victims and survivors, would people who are on the move, who are in part of the migration process, what avenues do they have to seek help or to seek support? Where does IOM come into play for this?
So basically there is a legal system that is very clear. The structure is there. Once they are apprehended, detained, or they even submit a formal complaint, they go through the system, and once the case is identified as a legal victim of trafficking, as they say, potential victim of trafficking. They go through there are shelters available for them to stay at until the legal process is processed. As IOM, we also provide other options in terms of assistance, especially we have what we call an assistant voluntary return reintegration program. In 2023, globally, we returned about 56,000 people to their countries of origin, whether they're victims of trafficking or vulnerable migrants that just want to go home. They have been trapped in one of those vicious cycles or fell out of the legal system for one way, dropped off, as they say. This allows us to provide them with certain assistance before. Some people don't want to go through the legal system, let's say. They want to go home. We try to provide them with immediate assistance. While we do, we take care of them and get them ready to go home. Then we take them home. We have a network, of course, of missions on the other side, where they receive them and provide them with reintegration assistance and follow up with them to make sure that they have gone home and reintegrated more. I mean, again, as you mentioned, we have different categories with refugees. We have resettled 127,000 refugees since we've been here in Malaysia in 2005, back to, to third countries. But of course, they have a lot of protection risks too, because we cannot return them home. So there are, again, I think what you really emphasize, unlike these different profiles of migrants and refugees and asylum seekers and labor migrants that really do need a tailored approach, and what we call at IOM a case management approach in many cases, and how to make sure this works for them all.
When sometimes we read of headlines or news reports about immigration raids, and then there are, and I don't use this term lightly, but sometimes it's referred to as illegal migrants, undocumented workers or irregular migrants. When we think about that, during those raids, is there a distinction being made as to whether someone is a labor migrant, an undocumented migrant, or a trafficked victim, or a displaced person, a refugee, an asylum seeker? Are those distinctions being made at those points of raids and mass, when operations of the like? Do you have any thoughts you want to raise?
I mean, from my understanding, of course, once they're apprehended, they go through a screening, identification. So if they have their paperwork, if they're as labor migrants, if they are refugees and they have their refugee card, then they are given the rights and so on. So breaking a law, breaking the immigration law is one thing, and due process throughout to make sure that they are given the rights based on their status is also there. And this is a system, of course, managed by the government.
Right. Is there ways to improve that system based on how other systems are operate or best practices elsewhere? Do we want to work towards maybe improving some of the safeguards or efficiencies in those systems?
I think maybe looking at alternatives to detention, which the government of Malaysia is prioritizing right now, especially for women and children.
Alternatives to detention?
Because putting children in detention with adults is quite difficult, let's say. And I think what they're looking at now is looking at best practices across the world, and especially through the region, to see how we can emulate and see what it is. Of course, returning children to their community is the best option for them, making them, return and feel safe. And this is kind of providing them with that assistance is very important. So I think that would be something that I would highly advocate for, is children in detention.
Definitely.
Which there is a lot of effort and a lot of support, and which I can link to your question also on the ASEAN. A couple of weeks ago, there was the ASEAN meeting on the guidelines of alternatives to detention here in Kuala Lumpur, hosted by the government of Malaysia, just to agree on what that,
so
on how to move forward.
A regional push
yes.
to address this issue.
Yes, absolutely,
Wonderful.
yes.
What about, since you mentioned ASEAN, can I ask you whether there is a more concerted effort to look at migration trends and migration flows from a regional perspective, as opposed from a individual country to country perspective?
By default, migration cannot be seen only from one country, right?
Absolutely. It's never just one country.
It can never be. And Malaysia is situated in the center and in the middle of so many migration routes, right?
Right.
So we definitely do look at that. We have a regional data hub in Bangkok, which we try to provide with as much information from all our countries to be able to put together the picture. But remember that the picture changes every day.
Oh.
You need every month to see what are the new trends, what are the new nationalities you see. Is there a new conflict that started? Do you expect to see new people moving because of a natural disaster, because of climate change, because of conflict? So there is no one set map, let's say, that I can give you. It changes. How do you maintain an understanding of the trends? I'm not going to tell you that I can tell you exactly how many people are moving today. That's governments who know how many people enter and exit. But from our perspective, we see certain things in different countries, and how do we link the dots, let's say, to make sure we can see what the movements are like.
Can I ask you about, you mentioned climate being displaced through climate change. Is that an area where we will see more migration happen because climate, extreme weather patterns has caused people to be unable to live where they are? Is that something you're seeing?
Amanda, maybe.
I think at the global level, it is happening is that there are communities that are being affected by climate change, therefore they have to force to leave their home. But we see that as a global trend. In this region, we are still conducting a research to really understand what is the trend right now, who are the vulnerable communities that will be affected by climate change. So this is actually an ongoing effort. In fact, we do have an ongoing project to look into this area of issues to really gather the evidence data before we inform our policymakers about these issues.
Yeah, the data is so important in policymaking, and for something as fluid and ever-changing as migration patterns, I can only imagine the challenge of gathering data to create evidence-based policy. So when we look at the programs that IM is doing in Malaysia, talk to me about what is going to happen next with the priorities and where you would like to see the direction of policies happen. Yes, Heba.
Yes. For IWAM Malaysia, we're strengthening our current programs. Our labor migration program is key. They've made a lot of, taken a lot of steps on what we call business and human rights, migration, business, human rights, working with the private sector, and it's starting to, I think, show a lot of good results. Our resettlement program will continue for sure. We are trying to strengthen our assistance and voluntary return with a protection lens. And we're working now with the Department of Immigration on border governance and also, as I mentioned, on trafficking. So quite a number of new initiatives and strengthening these initiatives within the next year. Also looking globally, I mean, IOM, we need to keep an eye on what's going on around us, as I mentioned. So looking at the situation, for example, in Cox's Bazar, where we are supporting IOM is supporting 1 million Rohingyas there. How is that going to be impacted? What are the trends from there? That's going to be also something we keep an eye on.
This has been quite a challenging year, hasn't it? Particularly for funding, for sustainability of humanitarian programs. I think it has been, hopefully 2026 will be a better year for that. And can I ask you about International Migrants Day? If we were to think about the importance of acknowledging acknowledging the contributions of migrants and also the risks that people on the move face. At some point in our lives, we all become people on the migration path. So talk to me a little bit, Amanda, about what message you would like the public and also policymakers to reflect on this International Migrants Day.
I think for International Migrants Day, it's always a reflection about the human story behind the migrations. And for this year, for IOM, our theme on the International Migrants Day is on migrate stories, cultures and development. For sure, what we wanted to highlight is that the human story behind the migration, especially about the opportunity, the resilience, and the different way of different cultures actually contribute to the country growth. I think we need to acknowledge all these positive stories. That's very important, and we should take this opportunity in the International Migrants Day to celebrate all these positive stories, correct misunderstandings, and really acknowledge the shared efforts of people on the move and their contribution towards the economy, the society, and the families across the world.
Yeah. Heba, do you want to add any last words before we wrap today?
Maybe just to give an idea of what IOM does in the humanitarian sector. As you mentioned, we have quite a lot of work now going on, as I mentioned, in Bangladesh, in Gaza, in Sudan, and Ukraine, and that is a big part of our work where I think we look at it more from an emergency point of view. This is something that we watch carefully, we support a lot, and that we've established different funds, including our Islamic Philanthropy Fund, where we are trying to support these very, very critical areas to support migrants and people on the move. Finally, I do want to thank you. This is a great opportunity, and I think International Migrants Day will be better because of people like you.
Oh,
thank you so much. And she's going to become a migrant in a month, and I'm a migrant here. So we have we are all migrants. Yes, and that was one of our mottos. I am a migrant. I've been a migrant all my life, and I've been a very happy migrant in Malaysia.
Oh,
so,
wonderful
yeah.
to hear. Thank you both for coming
Thank
on
you.
and talking about such an important topic. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.